Would you ever be able to write a sort of warts and all intimate book about yourself?
Have done.
Have you?
Well, we wrote the Richard and Judy autobiography, and we didn't hold back too much on that, did we? Pretty frank. And then I wrote Fathers and Sons, which was a sort of biography stroke autobiography about my paternal line, going back to my grandfather and running into me as a parent and our son. It was very much kind of a male line book. But
none of that sort of revealed your mental health,
you mean
or your inner self, if you like. I mean, it was what happened to you and what happened to your family.
You mean the things I might get up to in the airing cupboard, that kind of stuff? Well, I don't know. All right, the truthful answer is, factually, I wouldn't have an issue. I suppose emotionally, there might be some things that I'd prefer to keep back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh, I'd never write a warts and all intimate book. I wouldn't want to see it plastered all over the sun and the internet. Thank you very much.
But you don't have any warts.
Here to give you suggestions for some great books exclusive to WHSmith, it's the Richard and Judy Book Club podcast.
Hello, my name is Bryony Gordon and I am the author of Mad Girl.
Writing or reading?
Reading, every time.
Fact or fiction?
Fiction, every time, to escape to.
Keyboard or pen?
Oh, keyboard. I don't want to get like lumps. I used to have like a lump on my finger from writing so much at school. No, keyboard every time.
Writing in silence or with background noise?
Ideally, writing in silence, but with a 3-year-old in the house, usually with background noise.
Hard copy or e-reader?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm tempted to say e-reader. I like my e-reader. I like that I can just access stuff and I can buy books anytime, anywhere, when I'm lying in bed and I finish one. But I love a hard copy too.
Keep books or pass them on?
Keep them. I know I can't pass on a book. I want to keep them, and I think that's because I want to show them off on my bookshelves and show how learned I am for all the books I've read.
Who reads your first draft first?
My best friend Laura, who's a nurse, because she is sensible and grounded and will tell me the truth.
What's your favourite genre?
It's a bit weird. I love an end of the world book. I love sci-fi, anything that has an apocalypse in it. So I guess sci-fi, which is really kind of weird for a girl, but I've always loved them.
What's your favourite book?
Well, either The Stand by Stephen King or one I love, which I read every time I'm feeling a bit low, is the Molesworth series.
Best thing about being a writer?
Best thing about being a writer? This isn't quickfire. It's therapy. It's being able to write. It's working with words. Words are wonderful, aren't they?
Now, the thing about Bryony Gordon is, for anyone who's known her, and you and I, Judy, have known Bryony for a long time, and obviously we've read her work. I mean, she started out as a 3 a.m. girl on the Daily Mirror. Do you remember? She was a kind of a gossip showbiz writer. There was absolutely no clue to her and to the way she behaved in the outer world that she had any kind of issue or problem. I mean, she writes herself in her first autobiography, The Wrong Knickers. She drank too much and she took some of the wrong stuff. But in terms of her mental health, there was no question mark over that. She was Bryony. She was jolly, funny, pretty, good fun Bryony, clever Bryony, Bryony going places Bryony. In fact, to quote the word from the title of the book, she was mad. She had issues that years ago would have been described as making her mad. She had severe OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, in a way that, as she describes in the book, takes it way beyond the kind of silly thing that we all say about being OCD. I mean, you think I'm a bit OCD about the car if it gets some bird poo on it. I have to wash it off. Well, I'd say that's because it's going to stain the paint. But whatever, yes, I'm a little bit obsessive about it. But that's not OCD, is it?
No, I mean, for her it was practically life-threatening. She believed every time she left the house it would catch fire because she'd left a candle on or she'd left the iron on. It was very, very, very bad and led to huge depression as well. I mean, I think she'd be the first to admit, that she has admitted to us, that she lost huge periods of time because of it. But I don't want to sort of make out that this book's really heavy, because it's not. No. It's about a very serious subject, but Bryony is a brilliant writer. She's very, very, very funny. And therefore the book is a great read, as well as being very informative about those kind of mental things
Yes.
that happen to so many more people than we ever know.
And being a good journalist and a good writer, and some of her columns that she writes for the Daily Telegraph are excruciatingly funny. She can make this sort of personal tragedy side-splittingly funny because she's laughing at herself and she's laughing at the demons that pursue her, which is partly her solution to them. And she objectifies them, doesn't she? She calls her OCD Jared the Goblin King.
Jared the Goblin King.
Yeah, objectifies him and forms him into a laughable figure. Anyway, it's an amazing read.
Check for more great offers in store and online with the Richard and Judy Book Club, exclusive to WHSmith.
My favourite bit of the writing process is the end. No. I love plotting out the book. The one routine I do have is that I'm very strict, that I need to know exactly what's going to happen in each chapter.
I do not like plot. I mean, I have plots in my books, obviously, but I find plot can be quite a tricky customer because it's like lining up dominoes and you move one domino and they will fall over again. So I kind of prefer character. That's kind of my way in.
My favorite part of the writing process actually is when I have written. When I have an idea and I can see, like, I've written a chapter and I see that I really made this happen and it's on paper and it's there and that's absolutely my favorite part.
Always it's the beginning that's the best bit because it's all fresh and every word is like the best word that's ever gone down in the page for about 1,000 words. Then the next 79,000 are usually quite hard going.
I'm quite a big fan of editing. I think of it as ironing words. And I quite enjoy doing it, which isn't a popular view. I think most people dread editing, but I do like it, and I like to edit as I go along. So I will stare at a comma for 45 minutes and decide if it deserves to live or not. Again, I wouldn't recommend this to anybody to do this way around. It's quite tiring.
I think my favorite bit of the writing process is writing that first draft. Like, just because everything is so new and, you know, discovering these characters and discovering these moments and these great scenes, because anything is possible.
There is a lovely stage where suddenly the possibilities open up. Like, I like to have a very skeletal synopsis to work from, and then sometimes just one phrase or an idea will just blossom into something incredibly new, and you find yourself just tumbling through the paragraphs, just kind of like desperate to splurge this onto the page.
Do you think, come on, be honest, do you think that you're a bit obsessive compulsive? As in, yeah, I'm a bit OCD me, can't have socks and underwear in the same drawer, knives and spoons have to be separate. Well, in her often hilarious book, the writer Bryony Gordon shows what true OCD is like. Quote, the snake in my brain, close quote, that twists and coils reality totally out of shape. And just before we start with Bryony, who's here, hi Bryony, here's a thought for when you next sally forth to do your weekend shopping. Every third or fourth person you see will be suffering from some form of mental illness. You might even give a grim chuckle of recognition as you listen to this because you yourself are one of them. And Bryony's here now. Hello.
Hello.
Your first autobiography, The Wrong Knickers, which was a hilarious account of your misspent youth, was searingly honest, hence the title, which we won't go into now, but no mention of OCD. No mention at all, and yet OCD was at the centre of your life. What made you decide to write Mad Girl?
Well, it was interesting. So I was always too ashamed to talk about the stuff in my head because it's, I think what I've learned over the last few years is what all mental illness is, what they all have in common is that they lie to you. And they tell you you're a freak, and they tell you that you're alone, and they tell you that no one will understand you. And that's how they are so successful at, you know, at controlling you. And so I always kept it very quiet. And I didn't think anyone would want to hear about it. And then after The Wrong Knickers came out, I got quite sick. I got quite ill. I had a really bad bout of OCD. And my daughter was about 18 months old, and I hadn't been ill with her before. And I just thought, enough. I've had enough of this. I'm not giving this thing the power it deserves anymore by staying quiet about it.
What do you call it? Your
Jareth the Goblin King.
Jareth the Goblin.
My therapist told me to imagine it as a horrible, something evil,
homunculus
so
in your head.
Yeah, so Jareth the Goblin King, who was the character David Bowie played in Labyrinth,
right?
Who's sort of, you know, evil but slightly enticing in his silver trousers.
Yeah.
So I write a column for a newspaper, and I sat down to write about it. And the response was absolutely incredible, like hundreds and hundreds of emails and letters and cards from people, and they were all saying "me too," or they knew, or
Versions
someone close
of,
to them.
yeah.
And if not OCD, then it was some other form of mental illness. And then I realised, and I had this kind of light bulb moment where I realised it's really, really normal to feel weird. And I thought, why do we all keep quiet about it? And the moment you stick your head above the parapet, people just come to you. They come to you the whole time. And so I just thought, I've got to write about this.
I remember reading, before I interviewed you for this book, for the newspaper that we write for, about 6 months ago, I remember reading another journalist who'd come and spoken to you, and I was fascinated by this little sort of detail. And I want to get into what real OCD is like. I mean, I mentioned spoons and knives and socks and knickers and stuff, but no, this is heavy stuff. Like, you were trying to explain it to her, and then you said, look, let me show you my mobile phone. And in your mobile phone, you had endless pictures of snuffed out candles in your house. And you said, that's OCD. And this journalist said, well, I don't understand what. And you said, when I leave my house, I'm convinced the candles are burning. So I go back and check. They're all out. And when I get to the front door, I won't believe what my eyes have just told me, and I have to go back and check again. So the only way that you could get out of the house and get to work was to take pictures of them. Yeah. So when you got to work and you started to obsess that you'd left a candle burning in the house, you could check on the phone.
Which is I would say, any therapist would say, is the worst thing you can do, because it makes it worse, because you're teaching you're giving into it. I describe it as your brain not refusing to acknowledge what your eyes can see, be it that the oven's not on, or the candle's snuffed out, or that you haven't just killed someone or molested your own child. So it basically takes...
Just stop you there. You actually used to think sometimes, if you couldn't quite remember what had happened when you'd gone to bed the night before, that was because you'd blacked out the fact you'd molested your own little baby girl. You would really think that had happened?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was horrible. In fact, I had, last night I had some friends around for drinks, and I woke up this morning and I was really anxious that, because my daughter had climbed into bed with me, I thought, what have I done? And I couldn't kind of quite remember going to bed, which is kind of exhaustion and all the other things of being a young parent. Yeah. But my brain says to me, well, what if you did this? What if you did... Horrible, really intrusive thoughts.
So this is Jared whispering to you.
Because I mean, your book, I have to say, is very funny. A lot of it is really hilarious, but it's a really good read. It's searing about your mental illness. But obsessive compulsive disorder, as Richard said, isn't just about not, making sure. I believe I read somewhere that David Beckham always has to rearrange his fridge. Yeah. It's not that. With you, it goes hand in hand, when it's at its worst, with severe depression, and disabling, isn't it? Really disabling.
Yeah, it's what comes. It happens. It's what happens to me when I'm not. When you're vulnerable, or when your defences are down. To sort of describe it a bit like if you left your door open and your windows open, and a burglar might come in and take your television and all your belongings. Well, Jareth, the Goblin King, is the same as that. And
so a lot of the time, when you're in the grip of this, you feel very frightened.
Yeah, I'm frightened. Sometimes, I kind of guess it also almost verges on a sort of slight psychosis. Not that there is such a thing as slight psychosis, but you genuinely believe, I genuinely sometimes have been living in fear that the police are going to come and lock me in prison or take my child away. Sorry.
So it literally is, isn't it? The examples you're giving here, particularly the one about Edie, a little girl, it's worst case scenario. Jared takes you right over the cliff. Yeah. It's the worst that it can possibly be, and therefore it might even be true. Yeah. How do you get over these episodes? How do you come back from that nonsense that's going on in your head?
I run. Running is really important.
You're running a marathon, aren't you?
I'm doing a marathon now. For Heads Together, which is Prince William and Prince Harry and the Duchess of Cambridge's mental health charity, which is the official charity for the London Marathon next year, which is slightly mad, but I'm really enjoying it, and it's really it really helps me, the running. I'm not very good at it. I run until I look like I've been in the glare of a nuclear bomb, which is about 15 minutes.
But it burns out these fantasies. I just think
looking after yourself is... And the problem with mental illness is that you create these coping mechanisms which you think are helping you and they're not. So for me, it was drugs, a lot of alcohol, and they make you worse. They make you more ill, And And it does. It sounds. I hate that. Like I hate that. You know, I see people say, "How do you feel better?" I'm like, "Well, I eat well, I stop drinking, and I go for exercise." And you think, "Oh, really? That's so boring." But it's true.
It's true. Yeah. Well, let's take a kind of a rain check on where you are now. Then, I mean, a few years ago, you would, apart from these photographs in your phone of the snuffed-out candles, you used to take your iron to work, just to be sure that you hadn't left it on in the house.
A really big iron as well. Like it was like a steam iron. It was like one of those ones that looks like it's going to take off into space any moment. I didn't even have anything that I needed. I didn't iron. I'm not, you know, like you can't see, but I am not an ironed kind of person. And I don't even know why I had this iron. But yeah, I used to take it just to work with me.
Just in case it was on and might cause a fire.
Yeah. I mean,
now, okay, so the question is, would you ever do that again? Are you better enough not to do that again?
Yeah, I have. So I have therapy every month. And I mean, I don't really need it anymore, but I go because it reminds me to look after myself.
Yeah.
And I'm not. Okay, so the thing is, when you write a book, as you know, both of you, you have to have a narrative. There has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you have to be like, oh. And quite often I find people are like, so how did you get better? And I'm like, well, I still have moments where I feel really dreadful, and I think that it's a learning process. I'm constantly learning about how to feel good, and I never want to say, oh, I'm really good right now, because I know as soon as I do that, I'll you know, next,
Jared hears you and says, oh, really?
I'll prove you wrong.
Yeah.
So I know, okay, so the term mindfulness, people always sneer at, but I am really mindful of the way I behave, and I try to think instead of just feel.
I did ask you last time we met when I interviewed you that I asked you if writing Mad Girl had been cathartic, and you looked at me as if I was mad and said, it made me really ill. And it did, didn't it, actually? It wasn't a cathartic process at all. It was quite damaging.
Well, I think in the end it was good that I did it. But I was really sick. So I finished it in January 2016. So kind of a year ago. And I was I don't really remember last Christmas or January, or the one before. I was really sick. So this is the kind of time of year where I'm like, oh.
I think you've done so much good by writing this. I really, really do. You've completely demystified it. You've made it okay to admit that you get depressed. Not you, but one gets depressed and has bad times, and there's such a stigma to it, which is of course what the charity is all about, isn't it? Removing that stigma.
What I really hope is that one day we don't talk about mental health and physical health, and that they are all just seen as
same,
illness, because at the moment that differentiation, it stops people from talking about it, I think.
But I mean, my dad was a depressive, but my mother would have nothing of it. She said there's no such thing as depression. You know, she just...
Sort yourself out.
Sort yourself out, pull yourself together. It's just ridiculous.
Well, look, one thing we haven't discussed, and took no time to now, is the wonderful writing in this book. There isn't a bad sentence or a bad paragraph in it. It reads beautifully. I couldn't put the light out when I was reading this book. And I have to say, personally, I mean, we have books of so many different genres in the Richard and Judy Book Club, particularly within fiction, and we have factual books as well. But and we've had some very good books this year, haven't we? But if I was forced to pick my book of the year, it would be Mad Girl. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of writing and a real exploration of the human psyche. It's
I'm gonna have a cry.
No, it's true. It's absolutely fascinating. It really, really is.
Thank you.
Well, look, if you want to read the book of the year,
oh my God,
it's best to go to WHSmith, not just because they're our partner in this thing called the Rich and Judy Book Club, but because you get basically very, very different books there with extra content in the back. They're kind of like special editions, all of them in our book club list, and you won't get that kind of extra content anywhere else in the shops or if you get it delivered via the internet. So if you pop into WHSmith, get the book, and you'll see all sorts of extra things in the back, which hopefully make it a bit more special. Bryony, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bryony, thank you.
Next time.
We're back with Sabine Durrant to hear how a little lie can lead to big trouble.
I had the idea for the character first of all, and what I wanted, the sort of game I wanted to play, which is quite, is quite interesting within a psychological thriller, is somebody who you don't necessarily like and who is difficult and sort of contemptible in lots of ways, but that I wanted the readers' sympathies to somehow come round to him.
For more ideas about what book to pick up next, why not check out the rest of our choices in the Richard and Judy Book Club, exclusive to WHSmith, either online or in store.
We have plenty more exclusive content still to come with WHSmith on the Book Club podcast with Richard and Judy.